What is your take on capital punishment in the country? Last I heard of किसी को फांसी की सजा हुई थी was 26/11 जो guilty था, Ajmal Kasab, he was hanged to death. After that, I haven't heard of any public cases that have come to me as a civilian where someone committed such a heinous crime that they were sentenced to death.
We can go into long academic debates about what the Supreme Court said,
what do
rarest
you
of
think?
rare cases, etc. Again, it's very difficult to come up with my own thoughts on this because, again, it's a very nuanced point, the way I feel.
Okay, let's change it. Have you administered or been a part of a case where there was capital punishment on the line?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Murder cases, I have represented people. But again, I would say 1 in 1,000 cases, they will sentence the person to death. It is, there are always, it has to be rarest of rare, something which shocks the conscience of the society. So any of these murder cases that I have dealt with, the person, if convicted, got life imprisonment, even if from the accused side or the victim side, the person's always gotten life imprisonment. There has never been a question of death sentence that I have dealt with till now, especially because it's very, 1 in 1,000 murder cases that the person is being sentenced to death, right? It has to shock the conscience of the people. All of these judgments talking about various factors. And even then, if a death penalty is imposed on somebody, it takes several years for, all the appellate process to be exhausted, presidential pardons, whatnot, at the end of the day to kind of come to that. And that's why we have very few executions as well. Should it exist is something that, is up for debate all over the world. There are some countries, I believe Singapore still practices death penalty, and a huge chunk of Western world has done away with it. Obviously, USA, we keep watching, the great state of Texas is very happy to execute people all the time. There are many more states who do not want to execute at all, who've done away with execution. They all have valid points, People say that you keep the person in jail for the rest of their life. Why do you have to execute them? There is also a school of thought that says that, say for example, rape and murder, right? A lot of times or maybe robbery and murder, they say that they advocate that if the perpetrator knows that if convicted, I'll be sentenced to death, they will try harder to ensure that there is no witness that remains, right? So that's why they say that it's better to, in capital punishment places, the violence, the method of violence is far greater in comparison to other places where
I see
there is no capital punishment, right? So a person commits robbery and, someone...
And kills them also.
No, yeah. Let's say a person commits robbery and then they're running away. They're knowing the worst case scenario is that, okay, maybe I'll end up in jail for life, right? But if they know that there is a possibility I'll be sentenced to death, then they will say that now I might as well finish off the person and ensure, say for example, I stabbed somebody while robbing. Now, if I know that capital punishment is a possibility, I've already stabbed. He may die, he may not die. But if he dies, then I may be sentenced to death. So to reduce my chances of getting convicted, it's better that I now stab multiple times
and ensure that
the person is dead, so that they can't testify against me. That is one reasoning that is mentioned by people against the death penalty. But there are a lot of people who also, I agree to a certain extent, if you do not have the provision for death penalty, there might be a propensity for greater violence to be perpetrated. Okay, bhai, we'll spend our time in jail, and we might even try to get out of jail at a certain point of time using some sort of a legal loophole and try to live our life. So it's a very balanced thing, and we've had, I believe there is a project 39A run by National Law University, Delhi, in which they solely focus on trying to abolish the death penalty. And they make some very strong points. If people who are interested in reading about it, they can kind of follow up on a little bit of their material. They have tried to fight for commuting death sentence to life imprisonment for several, convicts. And then there are those who say this is something that you need to have. And India would, in India, they say that it should only be in the rarest of rare cases. It's not that every person who's convicted of murder is going to the gallows. Select few, maybe. I mean, to what extent do we as a society say that Ajmal Kasab, terrorist, killed so many people, and causes so much damage, strikes terror in our hearts, and then he gets to stay in a jail cell for the rest of his life. And then we are burdened with the costs of taking care of him.
Yeah, we're paying through taxpayers' money to care for a terrorist. It's not a criminal and a terrorist have vastly different connotations.
Terrorist can be someone who writes an email. Terrorist can also, terrorist can be someone dropping a nuclear bomb.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, a guy like him, sure, I would say deserve the gallows.